The rain drummed against the pavement in a steady rhythm as Keanu Reeves stepped out of the cafe, pulling his coat tighter against the cold. It was just another late night in the city until he noticed her. A heavily pregnant woman, dressed in a worn-out cleaner's uniform, struggling to push a mop bucket across the sidewalk outside a luxury office building. She looked exhausted. Her long black hair stuck to her face, and her hands trembled as she reached for a water bottle. Keanu watched as a suited businessman brushed past her, barely sparing her a glance. Something about the scene unsettled him. Then, as if fate had decided to intervene, the woman slipped. The bucket tipped, dirty water spilling everywhere. Papers and garbage scattered from an overturned trash can. She gasped, clutching her belly as she stumbled. Keanu didn't think, he just moved. Within seconds, he was at her side, steadying her before she could fall. "Whoa, I got you," he said gently. She looked up at him, her dark eyes widening. Thank you," she stammered. Keanu smiled. "Are you okay?" She nodded, but her face betrayed her. She was exhausted, overwhelmed. Before Keanu could say anything else, a voice cut through the rain. "Vanessa, quit wasting time. We're behind schedule." A burly man in a janitor's vest stood by the building entrance, arms crossed impatiently. The woman, Vanessa, sighed. "I have to go." She bent down to clean the mess, but Keanu gently stopped her. "Let me help." She blinked, confused. "You help?" Keanu grinned. "Why not?" Passers-by stopped, their faces twisting in disbelief. Keanu Reeves? Helping a cleaner? Vanessa stole a glance at him. She had no idea who he was, just that his kindness felt different. What she didn't know was that Keanu Reeves never forgot a good deed. In this moment, this small act of gratitude was only the beginning. Because in just a few days, Vanessa's world was about to change forever. The rain had stopped by the time Keanu finished helping Vanessa clean up the mess. Her hands still trembled as she wrung out the dirty mop, her face flushed with embarrassment. "You didn't have to do that," she muttered, stealing a glance at him. "I mean, thanks, but I'm used to it." Keanu leaned against the mop handle, grinning. "Used to what?" "People treating you like you're invisible." Vanessa hesitated before nodding. "Yeah, it comes with the job. No one cares who cleans up their mess, as long as it's done." Keanu's smile faded slightly. He had spent years navigating fame, seeing the way people overlooked those who weren't in the spotlight. But Vanessa? She didn't just go unnoticed, she was treated like she didn't exist at all. "Hey, Vanessa," he said, tilting his head. "How far along are you?" She rested a hand on her belly instinctively. 7 months. Keanu raised an eyebrow. "And you're still doing this? Lifting, scrubbing floors, working late hours?" "I don't have a choice," she admitted with a bitter laugh. "It's just me and my baby now. I need every dollar." Something in Keanu's chest tightened. He wanted to help, but he knew Vanessa was the kind of person who wouldn't accept charity. So he had to be clever about it. "Well, Vanessa," he said, stuffing his hands in his pockets. "You helped me tonight." She frowned. "What?" "I didn't." "You reminded me of something important." Keanu's eyes softened. "That people like you, the ones working hardest, who go unseen, you're the ones who make the world run." Vanessa chuckled. "That's sweet, but No buts," he interrupted. "You helped me, and I don't forget a good deed." Before she could argue, Keanu pulled out a small black card and slipped it into her hand. It was heavy, expensive feeling. "What's this?" she asked, confused. Keanu smiled mysteriously. "A little something. No strings attached. Just check it out when you have time." Then, with a quick nod, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the night. Vanessa stood there, staring at the card, heart pounding. She flipped it over, and her breath caught in her throat. The logo of an exclusive maternity clinic was embossed in gold. Below it, a handwritten note. "Everything is covered. You and your baby deserve it. K." Her knees nearly buckled. Vanessa sat in the dimly lit break room of the office building, staring at the card in her hand as if it might vanish. Keanu Reeves. The Keanu Reeves had just helped her clean the sidewalk, and then handed her what was essentially a golden ticket. Her mind raced. Could this really be real? A maternity clinic that only the wealthy could afford? Everything covered? No way. It had to be some kind of mistake. "Vanessa." She jolted as her supervisor, Carl, stormed into the room. A short, stocky man with permanent coffee stains on his shirt, he was notorious for treating his staff like disposable tools. "You done standing around?" he barked. "That lobby isn't going to mop itself." Vanessa shoved the card into her pocket and quickly stood up. I was just taking a short break." Carl sneered. You think the baby gives you an excuse to slack off? If you can't keep up, I'll find someone who can. Vanessa's nails dug into her palms. She wanted to scream, to tell him exactly where he could shove his mop, but she couldn't afford to lose this job. Not yet. That night, as she lay on the thin mattress in her tiny apartment, she held the card up to the light. Maybe it was real. Maybe, for once in her life, something good had come her way. With a deep breath, she picked up her phone and dialed the number. "Hello, Golden Bloom Maternity," a warm voice answered. Vanessa hesitated. Hi. I think I was given a card for your clinic, but I'm not sure if it's real." There was a brief silence. Then the receptionist spoke again, her tone full of sudden excitement. "Oh, you must be Vanessa." Vanessa's heart skipped a beat. "You know my name?" "Yes, ma'am. Mr. Reeves called us personally. Your care has already been arranged. Full prenatal treatment, a private suite, postpartum care, everything you and your baby need." Vanessa couldn't speak. She felt lightheaded. "Would you like to schedule your first appointment?" Tears welled in her eyes. She pressed a hand to her belly, her fingers trembling. "Yes," she whispered. "Please." Vanessa stood outside the towering glass building of Golden Bloom Maternity, clutching the card in her sweaty hand. The entrance alone was more luxurious than any place she had ever been. Polished marble floors, a fountain bubbling softly in the lobby, and a receptionist's desk that looked like it belonged in a five-star hotel. She almost turned around. "I don't belong here." But then she thought of her baby, of the long hours mopping floors, the aching back, the exhaustion. She had been fighting alone for so long. Maybe, just this once, I don't have to. Taking a deep breath, she stepped inside. The receptionist greeted her with a warm smile. "Vanessa, we've been expecting you." She blinked. "You have?" "Yes. Mr. Reeves made all the arrangements. If you'd like, we can start with a full checkup today." Vanessa nodded numbly as she was guided down a pristine hallway into a private examination room. The doctor, a kind woman with silver-rimmed glasses, took her through a series of tests, ultrasounds, blood work, and more care than Vanessa had ever received in her entire life. When the screen lit up with the image of her baby, her breath caught in her throat. Tiny fingers, tiny feet, a heartbeat steady and strong. Tears blurred her vision. "She's perfect," the doctor said gently. Vanessa wiped her eyes. The doctor nodded. "Congratulations, you're having a girl." A sob bubbled up in Vanessa's chest. A girl, her little warrior. She reached for her belly, overwhelmed with emotion. "I almost gave up, but now we have a chance." But just as she was floating in this moment of happiness, her phone buzzed loudly in her pocket. Unknown caller. Frowning, she stepped outside to answer. "Vanessa?" The voice was low, cold, and immediately sent a chill through her spine. Her heart pounded. She knew that voice. "I hear you've come into some good fortune," the man continued. "Would be a shame if something happened to it." Her stomach twisted into knots. "No, not now. Not when things were finally looking up." Vanessa's grip tightened around her phone. She knew that voice too well. "David," she whispered, her throat going dry. A low chuckle came from the other end. "Surprised? You shouldn't be. You didn't really think you could disappear, did you?" Her hands trembled. She hadn't heard from David, her ex, for almost a year. Not since he had drained their shared bank account and disappeared, leaving her pregnant and drowning in debt. She had thought he was gone for good. "What do you want?" she forced out. "I hear you got some very generous help. That fancy maternity clinic? Must be nice." His voice turned sharp. "You owe me, Vanessa." "I don't owe you anything," she snapped, her fear twisting into anger. David ignored her. "Listen, I'm in a tight spot. But lucky for both of us, I know exactly how you can fix that." Her stomach churned. "No, you didn't even hear my offer," he sneered. "I want half of whatever you're getting." Vanessa's blood ran cold. "You think I got money?" "I don't know, Vanessa. A clinic like that isn't cheap. Whoever's paying for it must be loaded." He let the words hang before adding, "And I have ways of finding out who." Her breath hitched. "You leave him out of this." David chuckled. "So it is someone important. Well, sweetheart, either you send some cash my way, or I make sure your little guardian angel regrets ever helping you." Tears pricked Vanessa's eyes. This wasn't just a threat. David was reckless enough to actually do something. And that meant Keanu was in danger. Her chest tightened. She couldn't let this happen. Not to him. Not after everything he had done for her. "Fine," she said shakily. Just give me time. David smirked through the phone. That's my girl. I'll be in touch. The line went dead. Vanessa sagged against the hallway wall, her heart slamming against her ribs. What was she supposed to do now? She had fought so hard to escape her past, and now it was crashing back in, threatening to ruin everything. But before she could spiral any further, another voice called her name. Vanessa. She looked up, and her breath caught. Keanu stood just a few feet away. He had heard everything. His expression was calm, but his dark eyes burned with quiet intensity. Who was that? He asked. Vanessa's pulse pounded. She opened her mouth, ready to lie, to say it was nothing. But something about the way Keanu looked at her, steady, patient, understanding, made her break. Tears slipped down her cheeks. It was my ex, she admitted in a whisper. Vanessa wiped her eyes, struggling to keep herself together. Keanu stood before her, calm and unwavering, but there was something in his expression, something dangerous. You don't have to get involved, she whispered. This isn't your problem. Before she could respond, he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. What are you doing? She asked. Handling it. The quiet way he said it sent a chill down Vanessa's spine. She had only ever seen the kind side of Keanu Reeves, the man who helped strangers, who rode the subway, who kept his head down despite his fame. But right now, this wasn't the soft-spoken actor the world adored. This was a man who had faced real darkness and wasn't afraid of it. Keanu dialed a number and pressed the phone to his ear. Yeah, I need you to find someone. David Cross. He glanced at Vanessa. Last known location? She hesitated before whispering, New York. Keanu nodded. Start there. Vanessa stared at him in shock. Who was that? Keanu put his phone away. Someone who finds people. She swallowed hard. Keanu. Aya. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You don't have to be afraid anymore, Vanessa. Tears burned behind her eyes. You don't understand. He won't stop. He'll come after you, your reputation, your life. Then he picked the wrong person to mess with. Vanessa's hands wouldn't stop shaking. Even after Keanu's reassurance, even after hearing the quiet certainty in his voice, you don't have to be afraid anymore. The fear still clung to her. Because she knew David. And if he felt threatened, he wouldn't just lash out. He'd burn everything down. Keanu had barely left her side since the phone call, but now he stood near the clinic entrance, murmuring something to one of the staff. His presence alone should have made her feel safe. But all Vanessa could think about was how David wanted him involved. That meant he had a plan. Her phone buzzed. She flinched. Unknown number. She hesitated, then glanced at Keanu. He was still talking, his broad shoulders relaxed, unaware. She knew if she told him, he'd take control. He'd fix it. But David wasn't just dangerous, he was unpredictable. If Keanu got too close, there was no telling what he might do. Swallowing hard, she stepped outside and answered. David's voice slithered through the speaker. Good girl, he cooed. Thought you might ignore me. Vanessa's pulse pounded. What do you want? Like I said, sweetheart. A little compensation. You're living the high life now, thanks to your generous little movie star friend. Her grip tightened on the phone. It's not like that, eh? Oh, spare me, he snapped. You always were a terrible liar. She clenched her jaw. I don't have any money. David chuckled. But he does. Vanessa felt her knees weaken. David lowered his voice, turning it into something sharp and cruel. You see, Vanessa. I did my homework. Reeves isn't just some washed-up actor. The guy's worth hundreds of millions. And let me tell you something. She heard the sick smile in his voice. I love a good payday. Vanessa's breath hitched. You can't blackmail him. Oh, but I can, David murmured. And you're going to help me. She squeezed her eyes shut. No, I won't. There was a pause. Then, softly. Then maybe I should pay you a visit instead. Her blood ran cold. Maybe I swing by your place, he mused. See how you're doing. Maybe you tell me no to my face. And maybe, just maybe, you and your baby get caught in the middle of a very unfortunate accident. Vanessa felt like she was drowning. Then, suddenly, the phone was yanked from her hand. She gasped. Keanu stood beside her, phone pressed to his ear. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes were lethal. This is Keanu Reeves, he said, voice cold as steel. There was silence on the other end. Then David's laughter. Well, the man himself. Nice to finally chat. Keanu's jaw tightened. You're going to leave Vanessa alone. David clicked his tongue. See, that's the problem. I don't want to. Keanu's grip on the phone tightened. If you come near her, if you so much as breathe in her direction, I will make sure you regret it. David laughed again. Oh, buddy, I'm counting on it. And then the line went dead. Keanu exhaled slowly, lowering the phone. Vanessa stared at him, panic flooding her veins. He's baiting you, she whispered. Keanu, he wants you to come after him. Keanu looked at her. I know, he said. Keanu pocketed Vanessa's phone, his mind already racing through possibilities. David was playing a game, but he'd made a fatal mistake. He underestimated who he was dealing with. Vanessa grabbed his arm, her eyes wide with fear. Keanu, you can't go after him. He's not like the people you deal with in Hollywood. He's dangerous. Keanu met her gaze, his expression calm. So am I. Vanessa swallowed hard. Please, Keanu placed his hands gently on her shoulders. I promised you, Vanessa. No one is going to hurt you or your baby. His voice softened, but there was an unmistakable steel underneath. I need you to trust me. She hesitated, then gave a small nod. That was all he needed. Keanu pulled out his phone and dialed. It rang twice before a deep voice answered. This is Morrison. I need information, Keanu said. There was a pause. Who? Keanu glanced at Vanessa before stepping a few feet away. David Cross. Find everything you can, addresses, debts, people he owes favors to. And I need it fast. Another pause. Then Morrison chuckled. You planning to make him disappear, Reeves? Keanu didn't smile. Just send me what you find. The line went dead. Vanessa stared at him. Who was that? Keanu turned back to her, his expression unreadable. Someone who finds people. A moment later, his phone buzzed. A message. David Cross, last known location, Manhattan. Currently hiding from 2 loan sharks. Keanu's lips pressed into a thin line. Interesting. Vanessa peered over his shoulder. He's in trouble? Keanu exhaled. Looks like your ex owes the wrong people money. And if he thinks blackmailing me is the way out, he pocketed the phone. Then he's already desperate. Vanessa's eyes filled with worry. That makes him even more dangerous. Keanu nodded. Which is why I'm ending this. Now. Vanessa's heart pounded. Keanu, what are you going to do? Keanu's voice was calm. I'm going to pay David a little visit. A cold wind swept through Manhattan as Keanu Reeves stepped out of the black car, his boots crunching lightly against the pavement. The streetlights flickered above him, casting long shadows against the rundown building in front of him. David was inside. Keanu wasn't here to threaten or hurt anyone. That wasn't his way. But he was here to make sure Vanessa and her baby would never have to live in fear again. Taking a deep breath, Keanu walked up the steps and knocked firmly on the door. There was a pause. Then, shuffling footsteps. The door cracked open just enough for David's wary eyes to peer out. And the moment he recognized who was standing there, his cocky smirk faltered. Well, he said, forcing a laugh. Didn't think you'd actually come find me yourself, Mr. Movie Star. Keanu didn't react. He just looked at him, calm and steady. Can we talk? David hesitated. He was expecting threats, maybe even a fight, but not this. His fingers twitched against the door handle before he sighed and stepped aside. Fine. Come in. The inside of the apartment was as run down as the outside. Half-packed boxes were scattered across the floor, a duffel bag shoved in the corner. David had been planning to run. Keanu took it all in before turning back to him. You're in trouble. David scoffed. What? You gonna psychoanalyze me now? Keanu shook his head. No, just telling the truth. David crossed his arms, trying to regain control. All right, Reeves. Let's not waste time. You want me to leave Vanessa alone? He shrugged. Fine, but it's gonna cost you. Keanu sighed. You don't need to do this, David. David blinked, caught off guard. Excuse me. Keanu met his eyes. You're backed into a corner. Owing money. No real way out. You think using Vanessa is your last chance. His voice remained calm, even. But it doesn't have to be. David let out a dry laugh. You're seriously trying to help me? Keanu just nodded. Yes. For the first time, David didn't have a quick comeback. He had expected anger, maybe even violence. But this was worse. Because Keanu wasn't treating him like a villain. He was treating him like a man who could still make a choice. David swallowed hard. And if I say no? Keanu's expression didn't change. Then you'll keep running. And sooner or later, the people you owe will catch up. He took a slow step forward. But if you let Vanessa go, if you walk away from this right now, I can help. David's jaw clenched. Why would you do that? Keanu gave a small, sad smile. Because I don't believe people have to be who they were at their worst moment. David's breath hitched. For the first time in years, someone was looking at him, not as a lost cause, not as a criminal, but as a person who could still turn things around. The weight of it settled over him. And then, with a shaky breath, David nodded. "I'll leave her alone," he whispered. "I swear." Keanu studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Good." He turned to leave, but before he stepped out, he glanced back. "Get yourself together, David. You still have a life ahead of you." Vanessa sat on the small balcony of her apartment, the cool night air wrapping around her like a blanket. The weight of fear she had carried for so long was finally starting to lift. Her phone vibrated on the table beside her. "Keanu, it's over. He won't bother you again." She let out a shaky breath, pressing a hand to her belly. "Did you hear that, little one?" she whispered. "We're safe." A tear slipped down her cheek, but this time, it wasn't from fear. It was from relief. A knock at the door startled her. When she opened it, Keanu stood there, his usual calm presence filling the space. "You okay?" he asked gently. Vanessa nodded. I don't even know what to say." Keanu smiled. "You don't have to say anything." She hesitated, then stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. Keanu stiffened slightly in surprise, but then, with a quiet chuckle, he hugged her back. When she pulled away, she wiped at her eyes. "I don't know how I'll ever repay you." "You don't have to," he said. "Just take care of yourself and that little girl of yours." She nodded, but before he could leave, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope. "What's this?" she asked. Keanu smiled. "Just a little something for your future." Vanessa frowned as she opened it, then gasped. Inside was a letter from a non-profit organization for single mothers, the kind that helped women find stable housing, jobs, and support. And attached to it was a check, enough money to get her on her feet without struggling. She covered her mouth, overwhelmed. "Keanu, He shook his head. "This isn't charity, Vanessa. It's just a chance. The same chance someone gave me once." Tears streamed down her face as she held the letter close. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid of tomorrow. She was ready for it. Keanu gave her one last smile before stepping back. "Take care, Vanessa." And with that, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the night, just like he had appeared in her life. But Vanessa knew she would never forget the man who had changed everything with nothing more than kindness. And neither would her daughter. Please subscribe if you like the story.